Well, welcome everybody to the Global Sports Channel, and I'm really glad to be back with you all. I had a bit of a break from doing interviews, and I want to give a shout out to Tasha Danvers, who was our fantastic host of the show for a few months, and Tasha, of course, double Olympian for Great Britain and a bronze medal winner as well, over 400 metres, and a fantastic host on the Global Sports Channel. So a great shout out to you, Tasha. Thank you very much for doing a wonderful job and keeping the seat warm for me. I'm back now, and it's a whole new theme here on the Global Sports Channel. We're going to be talking to athletes across the world about their life as a professional athlete, with an aim of really educating a lot of the sports fans that listen to our show and watch our show about what it's actually like to be a professional sports person. And on today's show, I'm very, very thrilled and humbled to have an outstanding sports person on the show, and she's all the way from Ireland. Joining me today is Nicci Daly. Nicci, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here, and congratulations, because in the last few days it's become official, although I was in on a little secret because you told me last week, but you actually have been selected to go to Tokyo representing Ireland in field hockey. Congratulations on that.
Thanks. Yeah, we found out maybe 10 days ago ourselves, but officially it was announced just this week. So it's really exciting, and you know, obviously the Olympics is the pinnacle of our sport, so it's been something that I've been aiming for since I started hockey 12 years ago. Failed to qualify the last two times for London and for Rio. So to get there third time lucky maybe, as they say, is really special. And, you know, it's never guaranteed when you qualify, because the team qualifies. So as a player, you're never guaranteed to actually be selected. So, selection is always a sort of a nerve, anxious time, and the lead into it is always very, very tough on players. So I'm, obviously delighted to be selected. I've had a few injury worries in the last couple of months where I thought, maybe it wasn't going to be for me. So it's been a huge relief, and yeah, just really delighted to get.
Now, for everybody listening, I'm sure people are really curious to know, what does it feel like to get that phone call? How do you actually get notified? Do someone ring you up and say you've been successful in being a member of the team?
No, it's funny. People kind of ask that quite a bit, but it's something that we've actually spoken about a lot as a team over the years, and how, we'd like to be notified, because, there's obviously no easy way for those not selected to be told. And we've kind of decided that the easiest thing to do is to just send an email out, and the team be listed on the email. Because what we used to do is we used to have the coach ring at a certain time the players that weren't selected. So, if you saw a phone call from your coach coming up at 6 o'clock and he told you that at 6 o'clock the non-selected players would be getting a phone call, you knew why he was ringing you, and you didn't really want to answer. Like, you didn't really want to have to sit there and listen to it, because you don't get time to even, process it or absorb what's about to happen. So we kind of decided that an email was the best way to allow people to, have their own time to let it sink in and process what's happening. So yeah, an email is sent out at 8 a.m. On a selection date that we've been given. So.
Wouldn't it be terrible if your email system was down that day? That'd be a shocker, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be terrible if there was an email malfunction, wouldn't it? What would you do in that situation?
I know. Well, I mean, there's two sides. I mean, if you were somebody who had been selected and you didn't know, it would be, quite a nice surprise. But if you're somebody that wasn't selected and you're kind of going around and people knew and you didn't know, maybe it would be, it'd be a tough one. So,
now, there's plenty to talk about. Plenty to talk about with you in the world of sport, and also leading up to Tokyo this year. You're going to be heading off shortly to Tokyo. But before we get there, for the sake of, again, for our listeners and viewers today, you're a lady who's been doing a lot of sport for all your life. It's sports part of your family. Tell us about growing up in a family that's full of sports people. What's it like, and what were the sports that your mum and dad were involved in?
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of different sports that have gone on in my family from both sides, my mom's side and my dad's side. But I suppose most known, or when people who know me or know of me, and especially here in Ireland, would know that motorsport is probably the biggest one. My dad was a racing driver, Nicci Daly, here in Ireland for over 20 years. One of the most recognised Irish motor racing drivers ever, I suppose. And my uncle Derek Daly made it all the way to Formula One. So that's probably, my biggest passion outside of hockey is probably motorsport. Something I've grown up with my whole entire life. I remember being down in Mundello Park here in Ireland with my dad from age 2, 3, helping out, cleaning the tires, just holding the pit board, doing any odd job that he could give me to be part of his team. So yeah, it's something that I've been passionate about for a very long time, and it's sort of escalated now a good bit. I've done a lot in motorsport over the last few years, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But yeah, a little bit about where it came from is certainly my family, and Derek kind of created history here in Ireland, being the first Irish Southern man to make it to Formula One, and we haven't actually seen an Irishman since his era anyway make it to Formula One. So it was a special achievement for him. As I say, he's just a small lad from Dundrum, which is just a small little town in Dublin. And it was a special achievement that he managed to get there, and very proud.
So when you were hanging out with your dad at the track, was he sticking you between his legs when you were a young tacker and driving you around the track? Did you have a go at holding on to the steering wheel of the car?
Oh, of course. It wasn't just at the track either. I mean, he was a mechanic by day, so he had plenty of cars around the house, and he'd be always putting us on his lap, driving around our land or whatever. Or he used to bring myself and my brother when we were about, I'd say, 10 or 11. Over to the graveyard car park that was across the road, and car park. He knew it'd be quiet enough around there.
So were you going around school talking to your girlfriends about motorsport? They must have found it quite weird for you to be talking about motorsport and passionate about this, was it? So how was it running around school talking about motorsports? Did your girlfriends give you a bit of a hard time about
that? I think back then in school, like, nobody understood my love for motorsport. I think they all thought it was a bit strange, but they knew that there was a family connection. They kind of understood it from that point of view, but could never really understand it, like, from a sports side, or how they would ever see themselves getting interested in it. But it's funny because recently, with the Drive to Survive Netflix documentary that gives an insight into the backstory of Formula One, and how all the teams operate and how the drivers compete against each other. Ever since that's been released, like, the girls on my hockey team now are like, they're loving, and they're constantly talking to me about it and being like, oh my God, it's so good. Like, didn't realize all this happened in Formula One. So I feel like the sport has evolved in a sense that it's now, reaching out to kind of people who never would have had an interest in motorsport before, or had any idea about it, understood it at any level. And I think that's fantastic. I think it just goes to show, when you open a sport up to the general public, or to those that don't generally have an interest in it, it can allow them to get an interest and to actually get involved in it, and understand it a little bit better. So I think it's been really nice to have people to talk to about motorsport.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you've been involved heavily in those two sports, being field hockey and motorsports. Field hockey's, I guess, a lot more well known for women across the world, and more established in terms of what women have achieved in that space. So motorsports is still a kind of a pioneering area for women in sport, isn't it? Really, do you see that a lot?
Yeah, I think there's a lot happening with women in sport globally. Obviously, everyone's every country you see, or every sport is generating these initiatives to try and drive more participation and visibility of women's sport for the next generation. And I think motorsport, predominantly male dominated, both on the track and off the track. And I know that the FIA Women Motorsport Commission are working really hard to try to improve that and to open that sport up a lot more to women. And it's something that I'm very passionate about as somebody who's worked and studied motorsport and worked in the sport itself. It was something that I noticed straight away that it's not a negative thing that you're the only or one of the only females working in the sport or participating in the sport, but it's more that, for me anyway, I had such a positive experience of working in the sport that I really wanted to share my story and open the sport up and give an insight to young girls as to what actually goes on and what careers are out there within motorsport, so that it's something that they can consider. Because if nobody knows about it, there's a good saying, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think that's really powerful, because there is, like motorsport, from a spectator's point of view, if they can't see it, how can they be interested in it? Or if they don't know anything about it, how can they really generate an interest in it? And it's the same for participation. If you can't see it, why would any young girl feel like they should participate in it, or that they can participate in it? So I think initiatives like W Series, the women only series that has been launched in the last couple of years, although there's been a bit of speculation around or controversy around whether it's a step backwards or not, I think I don't agree with segregating the sport. I think women and men are should compete against each other. And I think women are capable of competing against men in motorsport. But I do think that at the stage that it's at for women, and the level of participation being so low, they do need to do something that puts women on this global platform in motorsport, in order to inspire and empower the next generations. And giving those women opportunities to do that will filter down to the next generation and show them that, look, there's a path for me, and there's people doing this, there's women doing this, and it gives them the courage and the confidence to feel that they can do it as well. So I think all these initiatives are fantastic, and no matter what sport it is, the next generation, if they can't see it, they can't be it.
Yeah, you raised so many good points in that, and I want to spend a little bit of time during the show with you today going a little bit deeper into the motorsport thing, because I know that it's a huge passion of yours, and it is of mine as well. I also just want to put a little plug in for our channel here, because at the Global Sports Channel, we focus on interviewing 60% of our guests are women. We want to do that as a commitment to women's sports, and also sports that are not so well heard of across the world. And I think by having you on today talking about your experiences in the world of motorsport is going to be fantastic. So let's get the hockey stuff out of the way, because we're going to talk about Tokyo and the build up to that. You've told us that you played hockey and you did motorsports when you were a bit younger, and you've obviously carried hockey through. You also played a bit of Gaelic football. How was that?
It was great. I mean, that was the first team sport I ever played. I in primary school, I went to a really small primary school next to my house. I think there was like 16 kids in my class. But we got a new principal when I was in 5th class, so kind of 2 years before I left primary school. And he introduced this sport called Gaelic football. And, I'd never played it before, but I absolutely loved it. It was just like running around as fast as you could, kicking a ball around and getting to hold on to it as well. So it was just like really fast paced, and you got to kick the ball out of your hands into the goal. It was such an exciting sport. And I took to it really quickly, and I loved it. I used to soloing is where you kick the ball back to yourself. So that's one of the skills that's involved in playing the game. And I used to just solo the ball back to myself up and down my garden at home, just couldn't get enough of it. And that was a sport that actually took me to quite a high level as well. In 2009, I played on the Dublin senior ladies football team. Very because it was the same time that I had actually been called into the senior women's hockey team. So I had to make a decision around which road I was going to take. And the coach at the time had mentioned the word Olympics, and I was sold. So I chose hockey and decided to go down the path of trying to become an Olympian. Little did I know how difficult it was going to be all those years ago. But now I'm sitting here and it's finally happened, and it's been well worth the journey.
Yeah, I bet. So tell us, having a variety of sports backgrounds, has that helped you at all in your field hockey in particular? Can you bring other skill sets and techniques into what you do on a field hockey pitch?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really important that kids play a number of different sports because there is a lot of things that can transfer over. And in Gaelic football, your movement patterns are very similar to your movement patterns in hockey. How you lead for the ball, how you get in front of your player, things like that, and how you kind of create play. So how you can manipulate, the players you're playing against to move them out of the way to then to create play for your team and your teammates. Um, you know, give and go, like 2v1, like trying to create overloads against players. There's a lot. Yeah, like it comes back to basically just movement and reading the game, I think.
Hmm.
They're very similar in what you're trying to do and how you're trying to manipulate the play, I suppose.
Hmm.
So, yeah, obviously it's very different. One's stick and ball, one's just a big ball when it comes down to the technical side of it. But yeah, I think there's certainly how you see the game and how you try and create play is very similar.
Do you think
So
a lot of parents push their kids too early into one sport? Do you think there should be a greater opportunity for kids to evolve through different sports until they get a little bit older, or do you think the system works against kids today because they're trying to channel kids down a path at a very, very young age, and sometimes that's not a good thing, is it?
no, I think I would be very much of the opinion that kids should try a lot of sports. As somebody who is very sporty and actually enjoyed playing a lot of different sports and, you know, took to a lot of different sports quite well. It's funny, like my parents never pushed me into anything. In fact, if I never ventured towards sport myself, I don't know whether they, it wasn't that they didn't want me to play sport, they did, but they never was like, okay, you're playing football, you have to be here every day. It was more like me saying, I have training, will you give me a lift? They just kind of let me navigate it myself, which I really appreciate because, I know there are some parents who really, they're almost trying to manage their kid from very young, and they kind of have the end result in mind way before anything's really ever happened. That was never the case with me. It was just like, play and just kind of see how it's going as you're going. If you want to go over here and try this sport, go over here. If you want to go there, try that sport. So I do think it's important for kids to try a lot of different sports because even for me, when it came to hockey, I started quite late compared to some kids. And even when I started on the Irish hockey team, like I was 21, I think, when I got my first cap, which is probably quite old now for kids. But I developed late and I actually matured later as an athlete in hockey. And I think that can happen for a lot of people. You might not be as good as, you will be in a couple of years, but, that's not to lose sight of, where you could go. And I think sometimes if you go down one path, you kind of lose out on, where you might have ended up in a different sport. So, yeah, I would be all for, try as many sports as you can. And yeah, if you're kind of tracking well on a few different ones, it's going to come to a point where you're going to have to make a decision. But at least a little bit better, like what you like about each one and what the end goal could be for each individual sport.
Let's go back to when that Olympic dream was put into your head the first time. Did it become a addiction from that point on that you just had to get yourself to the Olympic Games? Is that how strong it was?
Yeah, I think I never really expected my name and the Olympics to ever fall into the same sentence. And so that was what really stuck with me. It was like, hockey, what was an unknown sport to me. I'd never heard of it before. In fact, I was really stubborn to ever wanting to play it. And, I remember being in school uniform shop and there was a bag of sticks kind of sitting there. My mom took one out and she was like, here, you'll need this. And I looked at it and I was like, what is it? I was like, I've never seen anything like this before. I mean, I've seen a hurl, like a hurley stick. And I was like, that's the first thing that came into my head. But I was like, this is the weirdest looking hurl I've ever seen. And I wanted to play Gaelic football, but the school I was going to didn't play Gaelic football. So she was like, well, it's either hockey or basketball or I don't know. She was like, just whatever you want to play when you get there. So I took the hockey stick and I was really stubborn in the first few weeks. I was like, this it's a stupid game. Like you can't use the back of the stick and, you can't touch your foot and there's too many rules and all this. But then, like, I think what really made me stick with it was that it was a challenging sport. It was tough. Like, it was a technically difficult sport, and I wanted to master it. I wanted to be good at it. Like, I wanted to be good at every other sport that I played. So it was a challenge to me to kind of, understand and be like, okay, I need to learn how to do this. I want to know how to do all the skills now. This is a challenge to me. And I think that's where it started. And then all through school, I really had no idea that it was an Olympic sport at all. Didn't really know anyone on the Irish hockey team, didn't even really know we had an Irish hockey team. I was very oblivious when I was younger. And it was only when I had that meeting with the coach when he first called me into the squad to kind of give me an overview of, what they're aiming for and what the goal was. And, when he said Olympics in 2012, that was going to be the first time that I would be part of the team to try and qualify for London in 2012. I was just like, yeah, the Olympics. Wow, I didn't think this was something that was possible. And again, it was a challenge. It was like, I'd love to be one of them. And yeah, so that became the goal then from 2009. We didn't qualify in 2012. When I look back now, we probably weren't good enough. We weren't quite ready. We got to the final of the qualifier and we lost to Belgium 3-1, I think, in the final. But we really weren't any match for them. So, but in 2016, our qualifier was actually in 2015 in Valencia. And we played some really, really good hockey at that point. We were really punching above our weight, beating teams ranked ahead of us. We topped our pool. And we took it to sudden death penalties against China, who at the time were ranked significantly higher than us. We were about 15th, and I think they were maybe 6th. And to lose out on sudden death penalties was really devastating. And it was like, at that time, you kind of felt, if we didn't qualify now, how are we going to? We're the best we've ever been. We've beaten teams ranked ahead of us. We've really punched above our weight for an Irish women's hockey team. And it was really hard to see how it was going to happen. And at that time, I really considered retiring. I was 28 at the time. So I was like, are we going to actually get better? Are we going to get over the line the next time? And it was a really difficult period. But I think, a lot of the girls that went through that devastating time had kind of said, let's give it one more go. There was a good core group of us who stayed on, and then obviously everything that happened with the World Cup kind of, reinforced, we need to keep going here and get over the, finish line for the Olympics. So I think I've gone way off topic here.
No, that's fantastic. But what's important to what you just said there, and a lot of people, again, listening and viewing, they don't really understand the total journey of an Olympic athlete and what it takes to get there. You've just spoken about a 12-year journey that started back in 2009, and it's not until now that you're able to sit there in front of us today, proud as punch, talking about going to the Olympic Games. So we all know there's probably been so many highs and lows during that 12-year period. Are there a couple of things that stick out, off the field of play as well, that have been happening in your life as a professional athlete that make you think, is this all worth it?
There's been a lot of highs and lows, probably more lows in the beginning, like the first 5 years probably of playing international hockey was not good fun at all. But I think, like you said, it's a journey, and even though results weren't there, or not making Olympics and things like that, you could see the progress both on the field and away from it. Like, this team was growing, the team was evolving, and we knew it. And okay, the world didn't know it, but we kind of knew it ourselves, that there is progress happening here. And we were knocking on the door for these big tournaments. We were knocking big teams over, in test matches, or, in qualifying tournaments. Even though we didn't qualify, we were on a path. And I think that the core group of players that have been there over that 12 years knew it. And anyone who kind of joined the team then along the way knew it as well, and bought into it. And there's been such a refreshing group of players come in to kind of keep this squad going on the trajectory that it is, and the progression that it's gone on. And every young player that's joined has added something, whether it's off the field or on the field. You know, we've created this culture, and it's just been growing and growing and getting stronger and stronger over the course of the last 12 years. And obviously, like, the World Cup was the biggest high for us at the time, you know, to win a silver medal in our first World Cup as this group of players anyway. And to be ranked second lowest in the competition was phenomenal. I mean, you know, we still look back today and kind of go, how did that happen? But it does make sense when you think about who we are as a team, and if you understand us as a team away from the pitch, as well as, you know, how hard we work on the pitch to compete with these top teams. You know, it does make sense that we got there. And now that we've qualified for an Olympic Games, where, you know, it's our first Olympic Games ever in the history of the sport for an Irish women's hockey team. So we have expectations of ourselves, but really, you know, going into the tournament, there's not a huge expectation on us. There's not a huge amount of pressure. We've never been there before. And it's a little bit like our World Cup. And that's how, you know, we're going to treat it, as, you know, we treat it like the World Cup did. It's our togetherness and our culture and our, you know, confidence and belief in the way we play, that we feel that we can do something special again at the Olympics. And you know, we're really excited and we're really looking forward to it. So yeah, it's exciting.
So, silver medal in the World Cup, what did that do for women's sport in Ireland, and in particular hockey, when you came back from that amazing achievement?
Oh, well, it blew the registration, you know, portal of every single hockey club in Ireland out the window, because you know, it just blew up. I mean, there were so many kids looking to join hockey clubs, and they had to be turned away because they just didn't have enough room for all these kids who wanted to join. And it was brilliant. You know, like, people know who the Irish hockey team are now in Ireland. You know, you say you play in the Irish hockey team, they're like, oh my God, were you part of the team that? And no, we're up until that point. So, you know, it's so true. You know, like, when you do something special, especially Irish people, like, they get behind these kind of national hero stories, and it has such an impact. We love sport, and we get behind every Irish athlete, no matter who it is, or every Irish team. And, you know, we were a national hero story at that time, and people know who we were or are. And it's inspired a whole generation, not even the next generation coming behind us, but I think it's inspired the whole nation as it is, you know, like the generation that is currently living. And I think that's phenomenal, that you can take a small sport like hockey, a minority sport, and put it on the map in Ireland, and put it on our television screens, which we never had before. I think that's powerful, and I think you know, if you can do that with a minority sport like hockey, there's no reason why we can't do it with a minority sport like motorsport here in Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you talk about going off to Tokyo and dealing with the pressure of that, because within what you've just said, obviously the nation now has an expectation that the girls are going to do well in Tokyo. How do you deal with that as a group? Are there some tools and practices that you take on board to try and keep all that white noise out of the training and expectations?
Yeah, I think it goes back a little bit to what I said. You know, when we went to the World Cup, we were very much in our own bubble. Like, we had no idea what was going on outside, or even back home. We all went off social media. We'd no idea that there was, like, a massive bandwagon filling up back home in Ireland, and we'd no idea that, you know, people all over the country were tuning in to watch us. And, like, we had no idea what other teams really thought about us, or did we care what they thought about us. We were very much our own group. We kept a very tight-knit bubble while we were together, and it's something that we know that has worked for us in the past, and it's something that, it's not even that we'll make sure we implement. It is who we are. No matter where we go, our bubble remains close, it remains together, no matter how the tournament's going, if it's going well or if it's not. Nothing really sort of gets inside there, or nothing kind of pulls us apart. And I think that's going to be really, you know, our strengths going over to this to the Olympics, especially with it being COVID. I know a lot of teams haven't really had tournament experience. We've just come off the back of a European tournament, and I think that when, you know, you spend so much time together in these COVID times, you know, if you're not getting on well as a team, it's going to really impact you. Whereas if you do get on well as a team, it's going to impact you in the right way. So, yeah, I think to kind of eliminate noise and all that sort of thing, it's something that we're quite used to. And yeah, just keeping our bubble nice and tight will be probably our focus to kind of keep everything going well.
Well, there's no doubt the word bubble has had a whole new emphasis behind it in the last 12 months across the world. It's become part of our daily vocabulary that we're in bubbles doing this and bubbles doing that. You're, of course, going off to an Olympic Games that was actually scheduled for 12 months ago. It was postponed because of the COVID-19 situation. How has it been for an athlete who's also a member of a team, and your family life and personal life, having to postpone the major event in your life for 12 months? How's that been psychologically, physically, and everything else to deal with?
It was really hard for me personally, because this is always in my head seen to be the last cycle for me. And I'm not getting any younger, and I will when we qualified in 2019, I could already start to feel my body was struggling a little bit. And it was kind of like, okay, just get through the next, 9 months, get to Tokyo 2020. This is before the pandemic had hit. And, I was really trying to nurse my body through the training. And, it was getting more and more physically demanding. The coach was really kind of upping our training intensity and that sort of stuff. So when the pandemic hit, personally, it was tough, because it was like, I don't know if my body will actually last another full year. I had kind of seen in my personal life, plans were happening or were due to happen kind of after this cycle had finished, and can I postpone those again, and did I want to postpone them? So it was tough because I'd committed like the last 12 years of my life to the sport, and you really have to give up everything, there's no time for working, there's very little time for family, very little time for holidays, and planning like the phase of my life that I'm in now. All kind of had to be put on hold again for another year. And that was tough for, my partner, family, friends. But I suppose the break that we got to have actually really served me well. So we took like maybe 3 months off. And it was good. It was the mental break that I really needed. And actually, the last year, as much as it's been difficult with my injuries, I've probably enjoyed it way more than I've enjoyed a lot of the other years with the team. Because as much as my body was hurting, I was giving it the time to actually get it right. And yeah, it was difficult, but I suppose it always comes back to why you do it. And, the dream was always bigger than, how sore your body was. And that kind of was what got me through. And obviously, like, all of my support staff, in particular, physios, S&C coaches, the sports psychologists were really important for me over the last number of months to help me stay on the right track and to keep the dream alive, even when I kind of doubt had creeped in quite a lot when I had a few injuries and things like that. So
yeah. You've explained the difficult journey of spending 12 years to get to this ultimate level in your sport, to go to the Olympic Games. Let's look at the flip side of it for a minute, and I'm interested to hear an athlete's perspective on this. There's been a lot of sports journalists writing of recent times that Tokyo shouldn't go ahead, that it's a discredit to the Japanese people when they're dying in hospitals of COVID-19, and here the athletes of the world are flying in and having the time of their lives, looked after by the Japanese people. What are your thoughts on that? Where does your mind sit on this controversy around, going to what's going to be the pinnacle of your sporting career versus all the trouble that's going on in the pandemic around the world today?
Yeah, it's obviously it's selfish to think of your own journey and everything that you've put in to want to go to these games, but I do feel for the Japanese people, and obviously I've seen some of the reports that have come out around the state that they're in with the pandemic, and all we can go off is what we've been given from the IOC in terms of our playbook and how we will we're responsible basically for not contributing to maybe what's going on over there at the minute, and that everything will be very strictly monitored, and we won't be allowed to leave. Once we get there, it's going to be kept very much the tightest bubble that there will be. But yeah, I mean, obviously we feel for the Japanese people. It's sad that they're still at that point. And I don't really know what what to say around the whole the bigger picture of the Olympics, the whole of the Olympics. Other than each individual athlete has to do their very they have their responsibility to make sure that they're doing everything that's in that playbook to make sure that they're keeping themselves safe and also the Japanese public safe. And I know that's something that we briefed on many, many times. And, as a team, we've been very good at keeping our bubble. We haven't had one positive case in our bubble since we've started out traveling back in January. And that's, it's something that we know that it's difficult to actually do. There's a lot of sports teams that have had that happen, and we just have to keep making sure that we keep our standards really high when it comes to our COVID protocols, and that's something that we'll be really focused on when we get to Tokyo, is maintaining that sort of negative run that we've had and make sure that we're not contributing to anything that's happening in Japan.
A lot of people have talked about what the actual playing field will be looking like when you get to Tokyo. A lot of teams, as you've already highlighted, have had different restrictions when it comes to lockdowns and inability to be able to train or go to tournaments to warm up for this event. How do you feel about playing against teams that are underprepared because of the restrictions? Is it something that will possibly take away from what's ever achieved in Tokyo, that you are playing against disadvantaged nations?
Yeah, I think there's been. It's hard to know. It's hard to know what other nations have been doing. Like, we don't have full, maybe, disclosure on what other nations have been able to do over the last 12 months. But certainly, like I said, we've had the advantage of playing tournament hockey just recently. We've had, with, I suppose, the nations that are close to us and the nations that we've been able to visit, where COVID hasn't been too much of an issue, has really helped. I know the likes of New Zealand have pretty much locked their borders for 12 months and have very little match experience. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the tournament unfolds with that sort of nations who have had experience recently and those who haven't. And I think it maybe will create a little bit more of an even playing field. Because usually we're the team that never gets as much experience as the rest of the team, so it'll be like the teams are on a bit more of a level playing field, and anything can happen.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to demand that you come back on the show after you come back from Tokyo and tell us all about the experience, but I'm going to put you on the spot now. Where's the ladies Irish field hockey team going to finish up in Tokyo? What's going to be your position?
We're going to medal.
You're going to medal. Okay, good. Well, I would love to chat to you again as a medal winner when you come back from Tokyo, and we can hear about what all that experience has been like, because up until now it's all speculation. We don't know what it's going to be like for athletes participating in this year's games, and we can have a good chat about that when you get back, if you'd like to come back on the show again. But I'd like to spend the rest of the show talking about motorsport, because it's something that you're very passionate about as well, and I have a little birdie telling me in my ear that it's probably going to be the area that you focus on once you retire from hockey, and you're already doing some wonderful stuff in that space. So we've heard about how your father got you into the sport, but tell us about how it's progressed and what you're actually doing now to help women in the motorsport world.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it probably will be the direction I'm going to go after hockey. It's something, like you said, I am passionate about, and it's something that I want to, having had the experience of being on the national Irish hockey team, and like I said, creating that sort of history and creating that national hero story for a minority sport. I think there's a challenge inside me that wants to do something in motorsport and to really put females in motorsport on the map in Ireland as well. And I think that it's it's certainly possible because I've been there and I've done it in a different sport. So yeah, I think that that's going to be my focus for when hockey ends. But um, in terms of where I suppose where my journey in motorsport has gone is when I went to college, I studied mechanical engineering, and come the end of that degree, a lot of people were going into, jobs in Intel or pharmaceuticals or um, different, like, these kind of roles where I just didn't really see myself doing any of those jobs, and I couldn't really see where I would end up. And I found this course in the UK called it was a Masters in Motorsport Engineering at Cranfield University, and they had really strong links to Formula One teams, and they were located like right in the middle of the motorsport F1 hub in the middle of England. So I went and studied motorsport engineering in Cranfield. Did a short stint working for Ford Motor Company in their engine plant down in Dagenham in London, and then went and worked as a data engineer for an IndyCar team in the United States. So I worked with Juncos Racing, and I just had the best experience working with them. I did about 2 years on and off around my hockey, and got to travel all over America. I mean, I try and describe what it was like to young girls and say, well, my office was the pit lane, and I had these cars going 200 miles an hour past me, every minute and a half, and it was just incredible. I mean, like, you never really felt like you were at work. There was this like excitement, like your heart was racing, like you didn't know what was going to happen. Every weekend was different, so it was unpredictable, and it made work really exciting.
Yeah.
To be part of my job as a data engineer, the car is fitted with loads of different sensors, and it's tracking every single movement that the car is making, and it's feeding back all this information on suspension, on aero, on even engine health, brakes, and everything that the driver's then doing, every movement that he makes on the steering wheel, how he uses the pedals, all that information is being fed back through these sensors. So it was part of my role to help with improving the performance either of the driver or the car itself. And it goes back to being a sports person. You're constantly trying to improve your own performance as a player, or you're trying to help improve the performance of the team. And I think that is what I really enjoyed as well, is having that experience of working within a team, understanding the sort of processes and this that you need to put in place in order to kind of make steps and improve and make progress. So I had such a great experience, and so much so that I still get regular texts from my boss from Juncos Racing asking me to come back and work for him, which I would love to maybe do at some stage for a little bit maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was really that experience that I've had, and that recognition of, why are there not more girls that do this? Why is there not more women in these positions? You look up and down the pit lane, and I don't see anyone else have a female engineer. They do now today. I mean, this is going back to 2016, and there's a lot more women who are working in the sport now than there was back then. And so when I came back to Ireland, I really wanted to tell young girls about my story and about my experience. And so I created a platform called Formula Female, which basically was to originally I wanted to share my own experience, my own story, but also to highlight any of those other women that are out there in motorsport, even for myself, so that I could see who else was working out there, or what other women were involved in the sport and what their roles were and things like that. And after coming across a lot of different women all over the world who were actually working in the sport, I decided I wanted to kind of create this initiative where I could introduce young girls to the sport through active participation and actually being engaged in all these different roles that were involved in the sport. So in 2019, I launched it was a Formula Female in conjunction with Motorsport Ireland, which is our national governing body here in Ireland. And we launched the Go Girls Karting in STEM initiative. And the purpose of the initiative was to bring over 1,000 young girls aged 13 to 16 to the local go-kart tracks all over Ireland. So all different schools would come to their local go-kart facility. We would engage them in a STEM workshop. So we'd use motorsport as a platform to teach science, technology, engineering and maths. and to just basically get them in behind the wheel of a go-kart and see what it's like for themselves. And it was all about, bringing these subjects to life, bringing the sport to life by giving them the opportunity to actually, be the role, be the engineer, be the mechanic, be the driver, be the team manager, and to give them, an actual hands-on insight into what working in motorsport is. So that was a really rewarding initiative. Then I was, really proud that we were able to launch it and we got over 500 girls through the program before COVID had hit. And we'd had, the feedback at the end of the days was just incredible, with girls coming up to you being like, how do I do this again? Like, I didn't know there was so much maths involved in motor racing. Like, I didn't know maths could be so fun. And it's amazing that, like, they just they'd never had this experience before. They'd never had this opportunity before. And it was something that I felt, right, okay, we need this. Like, this is actually really powerful. And at the end of the day, we were empowering so many young girls to, some didn't enjoy it at all. But a lot of girls came away kind of going, yeah, I think I really want to do something in this. And since then, we've had a number of girls who've gone on and are now actually studying in Cranfield University, studying motorsport engineering, and it's fantastic to see. And I'm also working with young racing drivers in Ireland to try and help them, elevate their careers and try and get a young Irish female maybe on the world stage of motorsport from a driving perspective as well. So it's been really rewarding since I started it. And I did only start it in 2019, and COVID has kind of put things to a halt at the minute, but we are looking to kind of get back up and running in September again.
Yeah, brilliant. And as you well know, we're a big fan of Formula Female here on the Global Sports Channel, Nicci. So moving forward, all of our listeners and viewers around the world are going to hear a lot more about this particular program. And when you get back in the anchor seat after Tokyo and you've got that medal around your neck, we can focus a bit more on Formula Female and see what we can do to help you out, because it's an absolutely fantastic initiative, and it's something I think needs to go global and will go global, because I know you've got the right attitude to make all that happen. Now, I wanted to share something with you today about motorsport that you probably don't know. Did you know that a female from New Zealand has won the last 7 Formula One World Championships?
No, I did not.
Well, if you know who Lewis Hamilton's handler is, it's Angela Cullen from New Zealand. And I can tell you now, and everybody listening, if it wasn't for Angela passing Lewis his water bottles and his helmets and taking care of everything outside of the track for him, he wouldn't be 7-time world champion. So New Zealand is claiming 7-time world championship.
Fun fact about Angela.
What's that?
She played underage for New Zealand.
She what?
She played field hockey underage for New Zealand.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. So it closes the loop, doesn't it? Eh? Field hockey players end up in the Formula One paddock.
Yeah.
Now I can't.
I found that out. I was looking. I was really interested to know. Obviously, she kind of works. She does a lot of different. Her role with Lewis, I suppose, covers a lot of different areas, and working as a performance coach with Alex Kobe, the young racing driver. I'm interested always to learn from these different people in different sports, but obviously within motorsport as well. I kind of had, been following Angela a little bit and how she kind of, how she communicates and how her relationship with Lewis kind of works. So yeah, I found that out about her and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
So there you go. There's a little thing that New Zealand can claim a little bit of those 7 world championship titles that Lewis has won, through that initiative. And I can't let you go today without talking a little bit more about New Zealand, because you played in a field hockey tournament in New Zealand and it was probably the best experience you ever had in your life. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about that as well.
Honestly, New Zealand is probably the nicest place that we've got to travel to play hockey. It's a little bit like Ireland, actually. Similar, setting, only the, higher mountains, but it's very green and the people are very friendly. So there is a lot of similarities between New Zealand and Ireland, but yeah, Hawke's Bay was incredible. And not only just for the views and we stopped off on the way down to Lake Taupo. Is that what it's called?
Taupo, that's right. Yeah, well done. Yep.
Yeah, that was really cool. Some of the sites are just amazing. We didn't even get to really see many of the big ones or the big attractions, but just the drive down, I remember just being like, wow, this country's incredible. The food is amazing. People are lovely.
Well,
have I done enough to?
Yeah, you've done enough. Yeah, that's pretty good. And we can talk about motorsport because we've got some pretty good racing car drivers around the world at the moment from New Zealand that are doing very well on the world stage. We haven't quite cracked the Formula One seat yet, but let's hope it's a New Zealand woman that does it, because men have had their chance. We'd like to see a New Zealand lady in one of the seats there. Nicci, we're going to have to wrap it up today, but listen, it's been fantastic having a chat to you, and I'm very serious about getting you back after you've been to Tokyo, because I'm sure the listeners and viewers on the Global Sports Channel would love to hear about your experience through the eyes and ears of what it was like to be in Tokyo during COVID-19 times, and wish you all the very best of luck. Make sure you bring that medal back for all the people in Ireland to be proud of.
I will. Thanks for having me, Mark. I look forward to chatting to you when I get back.
Fantastic. Good luck, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks.
So there we are, folks. The wonderful Nicci Daly talking to us from beautiful Ireland today and getting prepared to head off to Tokyo to compete for Ireland in the sport of field hockey. But also a fantastic young lady who's also doing much behind the scenes to help young ladies and young girls across Ireland and soon other parts of the world to get into motorsport, and a very male-dominated sport until recent times. And she's doing some fantastic things. So I'm going to put the links to Nicci's initiatives in the show notes today so you can check all those out. And please go and check out what she's doing, because you might be able to support her in any way. And that would be fantastic if we can get more young girls into the world of motorsport. Well, thank you very much for listening to us and watching us here on the Global Sports Channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Hit that little red button and also the bell notification. Every time we drop a new video, you will be notified of its presence. You can also listen to us in a podcast version. So go to wherever you get all your good podcasts and type in the Global Sports Channel and you will get us there as well. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. So if you want to follow us on social media and comment on any of the shows that we put together, we'd love to hear from you and be part of the Global Sports Channel family. Well, that's it for this time. I'll be back again soon with another interview from the world of sports. Until then, I wish you all a very happy and safe week ahead. Bye for now.